Hello, Comanche9 here, another Topic of the Week video. And this week I'm going to be talking about Gravity Falls. This week's topic was submitted by a Tumblr Anon, and their topic is your thoughts about Gravity Falls and why you enjoy it. Now, I've talked about Gravity Falls in the past a couple of times, so those are usually a bit more specific. I thought I'd take this time to talk a little bit more about the series as an overall, and why it's actually a good show. One of the things, and this has been talked about before, but one of the things that really sticks out with Gravity Falls compared to a lot of shows is that it had its run and they ended it. Shocker. Ultimately times, and this isn't even just with cartoons, this also goes with live action shows, is they never have any set stopping point. And even if they did have a set stopping point, they'll go past it because, hey, the ratings are good, so let's just keep going. Fortunately, this is the death of creativity. And unless you're a writer who's actually, where you have teams of writers who are really good at making stuff up on the go, this is a terrible idea. Because inevitably, they keep going and going and going until the ratings drop and they're like, alright, you're canceled now. And then oftentimes you'll still end up with stuff that's like a forced ending that's completely unsatisfactory. And that just never ends well. It's best to really quit while you're ahead with shows, and it's really best to actually have a planned story and know where you're going to end it. And even going past that can end up with disastrous consequences. In fact, one of the best examples of a show failing to stop when they should have is the show Person of Interest, a show I actually really liked when it was airing. And it reached the point, the whole endgame story arc was like a massive three-parter, and they wrapped up like every single plot point, every single running plot point that had been going on, and you're thinking, alright, it's done. They beat all of the bad guys, they've tied up everything. You would think, okay, I mean, sure, stuff could happen, but like, the show is done, right? Nope. Immediate drama in the last, 30 seconds of the last part of it, and it's just like all of a sudden they start pulling out new plot points and with more seasons, and I was like, I'm done. And predictably, the show just got really stupid because all of the plot points that they had come up with have been tied up. So then they had to just invent new ones, pull the things straight out of their own butts. But Gravity Falls didn't do that. Alex Hirsch and the crew made the 2 seasons they wanted to, and then they stopped. It leaves you wanting more, but in a good way. And to be honest, I would rather have the creator make a show, complete the story that they want, complete the story that they wanted to tell, and then stop. And sure, we would want more, and we got more with the comics and stuff, and you had the journals, and they gave you some more information. And you see, that's fine. Because you can still get more information, but you don't have to run this show into the ground. Another good example of a show that did this is Avatar: The Last Airbender, still widely considered to be one of the greatest cartoons, if not one of the greatest shows of all time. A crowning achievement in Western animation, most certainly. And shoot, even its bad episodes, stuff like The Great Divide, which is widely considered awful, is still not as bad as some of other bad episodes in other shows. Crowning achievement. Gravity Falls overall was really good. You can tell that they had ideas of what they wanted to do. They set stuff up. They brought up storylines. They brought in they expanded on them, especially going over into season 2 when you start getting a little bit more hefty stuff and you get more background, you get more information on the author of the journals, and then everything ends up getting tied up. Sure, there's still stuff going on in Gravity Falls that hasn't been neatly tied up. It's not like literally everything was neatly tied up in a bow, but all of the major conflicts, particularly revolving around Bill Cipher, have been pretty much solved. And that's good. I know a lot of people are like, well, I wanted a season 3. Well, I'm sure a lot of us would have liked a season 3. But, frankly, if you have the options of the show gets some seasons and they get to tell the story they want, and you want more, versus the show just runs on and on and on until it goes into the ground and you stop watching because you're just so tired of it, or even, God forbid, pissed off at how stupid it gets, yeah, I take the former. That's one of the reasons why Gravity Falls really works. Another thing that I really liked about Gravity Falls was how it set itself up. Because the first season overall is very episodic. You don't really need much in the way of, like, plot in that. It sets up a few things in the background, but overall, it's not like, there's no real overarching story. Until you get to the very end of the season, and then you find out that Stan, who had overall seemed to be completely unbelieving in the actual craziness of Gravity Falls, is revealed to actually know about stuff that's going on, and he has multiple journals, and you're like, wait, what? Which then all comes to a head in season 2, when we're introduced to the author of the journal, which is Stan's brother, Ford. And that flipped everything on its head, because holy crap, we're meeting the author, a character who had been this enigma for the entirety of the show, ever since episode 1, ever since Dipper found the journal. The author has been this figure in the background. We didn't know what he looked like. We only heard about him, or heard of him referred to in vague terms. And then we actually meet him, and it was actually really cool. It was one of the biggest moments. And then, of course, it started a lot of speculation. Now, a point I want to bring up, because this actually kind of, especially nowadays, this is something that is relevant to a lot of stuff going on. When Ford came in, this sent fan theorists into overdrive. Because now that we had a confirmation of, you know, who the author was, and we know that McGucket, in his younger days, worked with the author, and a lot of people had this speculation that Grunkle Stan knew McGucket way back in the day. They started coming up with this idea, and it created one of the most popular ideas, headcanons, fan theories in the entirety of the fandom, which was the Mystery Trio, which was Stan, Ford, and McGucket, where people had this idea that the three of them were, you know, they were a team, and they were like Dipper and Mabel, and then they would team up and they would go out and they would, you know, do monster hunting, you know, tracking things down, solving mysteries, doing what our main characters in the show are doing, but, you know, 30 years ago. And this was very popular. I mean, super popular. You had fan art, you had people drawing fan comics, fanfics, people coming up with metas and theories and trying to explain all of this, and it was huge. And then we got the backstory episode with Ford and Stan, and yeah, wasn't even close to happening. Alex Hirsch warned us that our fan theories would get busted, and all of our headcanons would get destroyed, and yeah, there was no Mystery Trio. But the fandom didn't get angry. A little disappointed that one of the most popular ideas in the fandom was proven to be completely unworkable within canon. But you hear a lot nowadays, particularly when people criticize nonsensical writing in, like, The Last Jedi or Season 8 of Game of Thrones, where people say, well, they'll use a silencing tactic of, well, you just don't like what happened because it was different than your headcanons or what your theories were. And here's the thing with that. When people get really critical, when people complained about how Snoke was killed off in The Last Jedi without us actually learning anything about him, despite him being the most central figure of the entire trilogy, the guy who's behind literally everything that was going on and completely destroyed everything that the original trilogy cast had done, yeah, you know, we'd like to know a little about that guy. or when, all of the stuff that was built up in Game of Thrones didn't happen, when the prophecy of Azor Ahai was completely thrown out the window, Jon Snow did nothing, and all the White Walkers just disappeared and they were done. All right, that's it. And then everything, all the buildup that people had spending years waiting for was just flushed down the toilet. This stuff isn't, oh, well, we're just mad that what we wanted to happen didn't happen. That's just the logical progression of the story was thrown out for no reason other than to subvert expectations. Now, the whole thing with the Mystery Trio headcanon being completely debunked, the fandom wasn't upset about that, even though the fandom was heavily invested. I remember, I was in the fandom ever since it started airing, and let me tell you, the fandom was obsessed with that headcanon for a while. They even came up with the new Mystery Trio, which would have been Dipper, Mabel, and Pacifica teaming up with, Pacifica after Northwest Mansion Mystery, which I've talked about that in a previous topic video, that she would have joined them using the axe from the episode as her main weapon, and it was really cool. It didn't happen. But the fandom didn't riot. The fandom wasn't calling for the head of Alex Hirsch. The fandom wasn't ready to burn Disney down for, destroying everything. Because you know why? Because what we got was still good. And because, unlike something like Star Wars and, the new trilogy in The Last Jedi or Game of Thrones Season 8, the stuff that people were expecting with Gravity Falls wasn't being built up in canon. In fact, when you look at what was built up, a lot of the stuff that the Mystery Trio was based on was speculation. And a lot of people were free to admit that anyway, because we didn't have any direct, connection that Stan was buddies with McGucket. There were theories going on since forever that he knew, and especially once you learned a little bit more about McGucket and how he erased his memory, and we learning that he used to work with the author. There were a lot of theories about this, but this was all stuff that was in the fandom, and the fandom was generally, from what I saw, was willing to admit that. So, old people got disappointed with the fact that it was completely blown out, because when we got the backstory between between Ford and Stan, we got to see, their life story and what happened to them, and the fact that they basically were completely estranged from each other until the one day they met 30 years ago, and then Ford got sucked into the portal. So yeah, no Mystery Trio. A disappointment, but what we got was still good. The Tale of Two Stans was still good, and the rest of the series was still good. Fandoms are 100% capable of handling disappointment, or handling fan theories being proven wrong, as long as what we get is still good. And that's the thing with Gravity Falls. It was good. In fact, there may have been a few hiccups here and there, because especially when you had a team of writers, you're never going to have a show that is perfectly written. Even Avatar: The Last Airbender, as great as that show is, there's a few things here and there that could have been improved. But in fact, the only bad episode that I would say that was in Gravity Falls is probably the Love God episode, because that was bad. Like genuinely bad. Like, if I was telling someone to watch Gravity Falls, I would say just skip that episode, because whoo boy. And it's such a weird episode, because in some cases it just the Love God is just a weird character that I wouldn't say that the oddities of him doesn't fit in Gravity Falls, but in some cases you got some weird kind of almost sexual references, which feels a little weird. But the problem with that episode at its core is the fact that it supports Mabel effectively brainwashing people because of, love. The show itself is already establishes that brainwashing is bad. And just because Mabel may have had good intentions doesn't suddenly make it a good thing. And it's one of those episodes that just feels like you're like, after you watch it, you're like, what the hell? It's an odd episode, and why would you? And I mean, and overall, like, even ignoring the weird messages, it's not really that enjoyable. It's not really funny. There's nothing entertaining. There's not even anything much memorable about the episode, except for that one gag where you've got the Stan blimp, and it's supposed to be like oh, I love kids or something, but then the letters end up getting messed up, and it says something like I eat kids, or that was really the only part of the episode that I remember. And yeah, it's one of those episodes that I feel like it should have been left on the cutting room floor because it didn't add anything to the show. I mean, shoot, I know they had other episodes that they had thrown out, like, that they had brainstormed ideas for that didn't make it in, that should have replaced it. Like, I remember one that was like, you had some, I think it was some biker gang that Stan used to be in years ago. They came into town, and you'd get more on Stan, and I'm like, well, why didn't we get that episode? I would have loved to have that instead of Love God. But even then, out of 2 seasons, you had 1 episode that I thought was actually bad. Overall, that's a pretty darn good success rate. You had a few things here and there. I mean, some stuff that was kind of set up that was never really developed. And, it's a criticism that, especially later in the show, that Pacifica was never really shown. Pacifica never really got much attention after Northwest Mansion Mystery. I mean, she did show some growth. But she still kind of acted a bit bratty, which, I mean, no one just changes completely overnight. But I understand. I understand a lot of people really wanted there to be a significant change with Pacifica. But, I mean, that's fine. I mean, in terms of the show, having seen shows that just completely self-destruct and become complete trash, I watched Legend of Korra. People know I've watched Legend of Korra. That show became garbage. I would much rather take a show that had good writing with a few hiccups over a complete freaking trash fire. And it's sad that we're kind of at that point now where something just being decent is considered an anomaly. Just something strange, like, wow, I'm impressed. Something that doesn't suck. Like, yeah, it's a sad thing. And even then, Gravity Falls aired a number of years ago, too. So when you look at a lot of shows that a lot of people liked, it's like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of modern shows that just, it's very rare that they would stack up to great shows like, Gravity Falls or Avatar: The Last Airbender. But Gravity Falls, at its core, was a show that stayed true to what it was. And it expanded when it needed to. And when you got to the end, the whole Weird Mageddon plotline, that was the big grand finale, that was cool. That was when you got to see Bill Cipher take front and center stage and was running the show, and you got to see all the crazy stuff that was going on. And I do understand that there were some people who were a little disappointed that Stan regained his memories so fast after sacrificing his own mind to defeat Bill. But I don't know. I'm a sucker for that happy ending. And to be honest, the fact that he was willing to sacrifice it was really probably one of the greatest shows of character for Stan. A character who has shown himself to be selfish and just kind of dickish in a lot of cases, does genuinely care for his family and is, at his core, not a bad person. And you know what? They still left Gravity Falls kind of open-ended because you see the statue of Bill Cipher at the end, and I think even there was that cipher at the end with the symbols where you could translate that and there's hints that Bill Cipher could return. And they concluded the major story arcs that was going on in Gravity Falls, especially relating to the author. And then they leave things open now. And honestly, if they wanted to come back and make another season of Gravity Falls, they could. They could set it up with the return of Bill Cipher. And on top of that, there's so much great just weirdness that they could do. I mean, shoot, you look at a lot of the stuff that was in those, like, mini episodes, or I don't know if they were online or whatever, but, you had a lot of these things where it was just a funny little thing that was going on for, like, a few minutes. And it was just, look at what they're doing for this little bit. Or that one time when Dipper tried to figure out what Stan's tattoo was, which is actually plot relevant. You actually realize that's not a tattoo. It's a burnt-on marking of one of the glyphs in the underground lab. And I mean, there's a lot of creativity in Gravity Falls, and if they came back and they did a good job with continuing, honestly, I'd love to see more Gravity Falls. But I'd be happy if all we got were just some extra comics. And if that's all we get, then, fine. Because the show we got was good. And I know I like criticizing a lot of stuff, but sometimes I like just talking about stuff that I enjoy. Because it's just fun. So I think that's about it for this topic. If you want to submit a topic to me, you can comment below if you're on YouTube. If you're on Tumblr, send me an ask, put topic : then whatever topic you want me to talk about. Or if you're on the Discord, you can go into the topic submissions channel and submit a topic there. Just make sure to follow the rules that I'll be posting down below. If you want to watch last week's topic video, you can check that out here. If you want to watch next week's topic video, you can check that out here when I get that done. So what are your thoughts on Gravity Falls? Please comment below, and thank you for watching.